Good evening and welcome to the City Council Study Session, Tuesday, August 29th, 2023. Two items on the agenda. The first of these items is the update from the Norman Police Department regarding activity and statistics. Chief.
Thank you, sir. Chief Kevin Foster, the Norman Police Department. And I've got a short presentation, but we go over all our data and the things that have been being discussed in council meetings, so you can see what we have for you, and I'll explain some of it and explain data in general as we move through. I've got the deputy chief and at least a couple of the majors and my database manager here in case there's something I can't answer. Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started here. Offense data comes from multiple sources, and there's multiple things that you'll hear in here. There's calls for service, which that's one thing, and it will just be police calls for service that we'll talk about in here. Then there's offense reports. That's where we actually take a report from an offense that has happened. And then collisions are a separate thing. They're not included in the offense reports. Annually, we compile the data and we report it to the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, who then in turn takes all their numbers from our state and sends it to the FBI. Generally, OSBI data and FBI data are at least a year behind because it takes a while to get it to the OSBI from all the agencies in the state, and it takes them a while to put it together and send it on to the FBI. So they are behind a little bit. The standard in what we report currently is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. It's NIBRS. Everybody was supposed to have moved to NIBRS away from UCR, which is what you may think of, the Uniform Crime Reporting System, that used to have Part 1 crimes, rape, murder, robbery, those type of things, those big ones. And there's Part A crimes in NIBRS, which includes a lot bigger section. I've got, pass these around, but it sort of explains what the crimes are, and they break each category, Part A, Part B, Part C, into against persons, against property, and against society. It's broken down in these documents so you can sort of see what we're talking about as we move along. So people can get data from multiple sources here. Some of those sources, FBI Crime Data Explorer. You can sort of research crime on the FBI Data Explorer. There is a link from our webpage to that. OSBI Annual Statewide Crime Reporting. We don't have a link to that off our system, but you can go straight to the OSBI's website. We have our Benchmark City Survey online. That's with 30 cities that's similar size to Norman, demographics, things like that, somewhat similar to us, college town, things like that. Our most recent survey will be online, so that would be 2022 data that would be online. And then what we put out there, which is quite a bit compared to most departments across the nation, we do a daily activity reports. Now, daily activity reports gives quite a bit of information about the things that are reported. We only leave that up for 30 days. Reason being is some of those are arrests and different things, and those can be expunged. So we take those down regularly, but you have 30 days worth of the dailies on there. Then we do an MPD, a weekly and a monthly department overview reports, which I think each week you get the weekly in the packet. And then we have 5-year data reports that sort of shows you our collisions, offenses, and calls for service over 5 years, so you can sort of see the trends of going up or down. And they will go up and down as for various years. We sort of look for big changes that's significant, and that's the different things that we take notice of. And then we have the MPD Open Data Portal. That is a program, federal program that we participate in and putting all our data out there that you can research. Right now, that's sort of researchable where you'd have to download it and you go through it yourself type of thing. But we are still, when I went on their website, we're still the only city in the state of Oklahoma that participates in that data portal, and one of only 120 across the nation that participate in that. So we're pretty open with our data, I think, comparably to most places. Now we just get into the data. Overall, our reported offenses are up 3%. You can see the numbers down there from 22 to 23, and the jump there, you had about a 3% increase from 21 to 22 also. And that's overall. Yes. Whoever. I'll leave it to the mayor, sorry.
Whichever one's first.
Sorry. Can you go back to the other side?
Yep.
So I can make sure I'm saying it right. What I'm thinking. Okay, so with these are reported offenses, not convictions, right? These
Yes.
are just.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That was my same question too, just
Okay.
clarifying if it was reported or actual.
How does the data trend on years prior to 21?
They were higher, I believe.
Okay. So went down and then slightly ticked back up.
Yeah.
It's kind of,
Well, that's-
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
okay.
COVID, I mean, we all experienced it, right? We saw a huge decline in data, in all around.
Where do these numbers, the 23 numbers, stand to the pre-COVID numbers? How do they compare?
It's getting right back to.
Yeah, this year we're sort of back to pre-COVID area, calls for service, offenses,
Okay.
various things to get back.
More, you think? I mean,
We're headed that way, but let's see where we're going. And it's like Councilmember Holman has brought up, our population has increased, not significant, but it
Sure.
does have an impact on it.
correlation does not equal causation, as
Yes,
they say. So,
yes.
yeah, no, appreciate that. Councilman.
I skipped to the next one. I
Oh.
was just curious what crimes against society are, because property would be like obviously theft, arson, things like that. And
The little packet that did you get one of these when they come around?
yes.
Okay. That sort of breaks it down over to the side. It will tell you one under part A, and then off to the side, you'll see if it's society, property, or against persons.
So animal cruelty.
Yeah, drugs and stuff.
Okay, I see.
Gambling.
Sort of see how it lays it out?
So drug trafficking is considered society. And okay. Gambling, pornography.
Some of the real odd ones, some of them's odd in the way they classify things in NIBRs. We have no control over that. That's a federal reporting system. It's like robberies of property crimes.
So I see Group A, crimes against society, but then I'm looking at this Group B, so we're looking at curfew, loitering, vagrancy violations. Do you have statistics for Group B? Like
Yes,
you do
we
for
do.
this?
They're
Okay.
coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting ahead.
Yeah, you'll
We're all
see them all.
excited.
We don't get into, I don't think we get into Group C, but we're getting way down on what they are then, but
What is Group C? Is it in this?
anything else that is reported, if they have it in the packet I gave you even,
No,
see
there's,
it
it
now.
stops at B.
and that may be it. I was thinking there was another group of them. Here, overall reported offenses in Group A, which is most of your major crime that you would think of or that most people would think of, it's down 3%. You can see the numbers trending there from 21 to 22 and 22 to 23. That's probably due to our property crime decreases, primarily, as you can see down at the bottom, for theft and motor vehicle theft. Those are two big ones, and they're larger numbers of offenses, so it moves the overall reporting for the property crimes down. But over on the right-hand side, you can see that Group A crimes against persons is up 11%, and crimes against society is up 16%. And then at the bottom, we show you the ones on the left, that's some of them that were trending up. The ones on the right are some that was trending down.
Go ahead.
So kidnapping, is that like a parent taking a child that they're a non-custodial parent? Like, what is the uptick in that? Do you know?
I don't know. It could be, and that's a lot of them probably, one that doesn't have custody or a family member that takes him that doesn't have custody. But some of them are just,
Trafficking.
yeah,
Okay.
outright or is somebody taking the kid that didn't have permission or
Right. And then any idea about the other upticks like fraud, drug violations? I mean, we are struggling with mental health and drug
fraud.
abuse.
There's a lot more online fraud type things going on, a lot more victimization through that. Drug violations, I think that's due to you've seen a downtick in what we did during COVID, and now it's picking back up. You see the same thing in DUIs and traffic contacts. They're starting to do more of them. It's getting back to more pre-COVID numbers of what it would be. The ones that are down, some of those, I don't know how much we can control, like sexual assaults, but definitely the theft and motor vehicle theft, that's just the work that they're doing out there, getting people off the streets. And part of that, particularly the theft and the motor vehicle theft, you'll see here in another slide, runaways, primarily from group homes that's in our jurisdiction. We think that we've helped that a little bit. We're hoping to see a downtick in that because they move some people around. They've taken notice that we've contacted them enough, and we've contacted representatives to try to encourage the group homes to do a little better job where kids can't just walk away.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Holman?
This group A, does it include also homicide?
Yes.
Last I saw, we've had officially 2 this year. Is that still the same?
Murder,
And if I recall, we had 2 officially last year, and our average is
yes.
less than 2 a year.
And the thing is, you remember the murder-suicide we just recently had. So the other problem is some things will take a little bit to click onto our numbers here when we are querying them. So we could be behind 1 or 2, and when it's on homicides, that's a big percentage because there's so few of them. But
Right, so if we had average less than 2 a year, if we had 3, it would be a 100% increase in.
yeah, you're going to kick up
Murder and
50% there, yeah.
And so, and I think that is an important statistic. I agree that it is very rare in Norman, and I think it comes up on this slide, next one about comparison to other cities, but with overall crime. But I have noticed when looking at other cities around here that we've had fewer homicides than Oklahoma City and Edmond and Broken Arrow and Tulsa, of course, and that Moore has had the same number as we have had this year so far.
Yeah.
So I find that somewhat interesting, but I guess there's no real way to. I mean, a homicide seems sort of random, like it could happen anywhere, regardless of.
Sort of.
How many
You
police
don't know
are-
how many of those you've headed off arresting people for
Right,
other things.
yeah,
So
yeah.
there could have been more if you didn't do certain things. And maybe we could have prevented some of these if we would have gotten other information or people would have reported different things. We just can't tell.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Councilmember Ford?
Before we go too much more into this, I have seen on social media recently, I think there's some confusion. Can you just answer the question? Is this just our agency or does this include OU Norman? Because
This
some
is
people are
just,
confused.
yeah, this is
Okay.
just our agency. That's a good point. OU reports their own data. So this is just our agency.
To that point, though, if you guys were to arrest an OU student, it would show up in this data, correct?
Yes, it would
Okay.
show up in this data.
Okay.
And to follow up on that, Norman police are who has to respond to calls to the fraternities and sororities. If there
Yes,
were,
those are all in our jurisdictions and not on campus.
So any sexual assault or rape or anything like that that would take place on those would be in our statistics.
Yes, if it happened at those locations, which I don't know that any have, but yes.
I would be interested to know like what % of overall crime in Norman is related to OU campus or specifically or. And then what is the relation to them having their own police department and what it, yeah, so.
Yeah. And they're struggling with their numbers,
Right.
just like we are, not crime numbers, but officers and getting people hired and working. It's even harder for them because probably some of their people would come to us. So,
I was told that they're at their lowest staffing since 1990 is
Yeah,
what an
that's-
officer at WPD told me
yeah,
recently. recently.
significant. This is just a layout of that part one crime on a map, so you can just see it. Now, remember, this is somebody that does programming, so the red dots isn't anything bad. That just means there was one offense at that location or in that area. The others are circles with numbers in them. Well, you can, that's how many has occurred in that area. Now, something that confused me for a minute. You see the number 9 out there to the side? You see it coming back in, it's sort of a little darker. That's Highway 9. That's not crimes, but it's circles with numbers in them.
Very
But that's just to
clear.
give you an idea of the spread across the town of what occurs and where these are happening.
Is that by section or what's an area?
I don't know what it's narrowed down to. That'd be good.
Ward 6 looks great.
Well, in this slide, this map right here that you're looking at is just, instead of giving a whole bunch of dots on top of each other, so it's kind of collaborating those dots kind of in that specific area.
Not a heat map, but
No, it's
just
not
a location.
Yeah, it's just a specific location based on the zoom level we're looking at right here.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a general overview to kind of give you an idea where things are.
Thank you, sir.
Group B. This is the Group B group that you was asking about. Overall reported offenses are up 22%. Now, you can see at the bottom there that it included DUIs, public intox, runaways. And I mentioned that runaways were up significantly. Again, that is a lot of those are from group homes. Now, those runaways, when they ran away, several of them committed crimes such as thefts or stolen vehicles, different things that they've committed. So a lot of this is self-generated. We're coming out of COVID. We're starting to do more enforcement, trying to keep accidents down, which we will look at accidents also. So we're doing more DUI arrests, which is good, and I hope they keep that up. Also, our traffic contacts are on the increase, which I hope that continues, because we've got to, that's one way we can affect our accidents, I believe.
How many group homes are there in Norman?
I don't know. This is primarily here. I'm talking about 2 or 3 of them.
Okay.
Do you know how this 22% number is impacted if you take out the runaway portion of it?
I don't.
Any idea, like, are we looking at 10%, 5%?
Well, I could subtract the,
247.
yeah, from the number, and that's about where we would be, so we'd be quite a bit down.
Okay, that's kind of
Yeah.
just wondering. Thank you.
It's a big contributor.
Right, that's what I assumed.
Or
What was that?
it'd be like
Are the group
10%.
homes operated by the state or private companies or?
They're operated by private companies contracted through the state.
Okay, they're all separate, I guess, or the same company?
The same company could run them, or different ones, different people.
I'd be interested to know what reasons there are other, I mean, I guess there could be a
Some of them
variety.
is just like, they do nothing to keep them there. They can walk out the front door, and sometimes they'll follow them, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll call us 5 minutes after they left, sometimes it's an hour after they left. It just varies, and was a huge problem there for a while.
And with DUIs, as you mentioned, we're doing more enforcement, or have we been?
Yeah, well, DUIs are up.
Or is
Obviously,
there
we're up
actually more people
27%.
experiencing, or are we?
We're doing
doing
more
more?
enforcement, probably because they're freeing up a little more of their time. We're starting to pick back up on our recruiting, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end here. But it's probably they got more time, and we're pushing for more enforcement of that because we're seeing an increase in DUI-related accidents across the nation. So we want to hit that on the front end rather than waiting till we see an uptick in the accidents. It could be worse.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know if I'm jumping ahead or not, but I'm a little curious about the group homes. What strategies did they identify, and is MPD also been asked to help with those strategies?
No, we weren't asked to help with the strategies. Primarily, we just wanted a little more control, and our complaints go to the Department of Human Services, who contracts these people. I don't know what they have done, but I did hear they've moved some kids away and around.
Maybe broke up some groups.
Yes.
And then with the DUI going up nationally, what do you
It's
have?
not
strategy?
necessarily DUIs, but we've seen alcohol-related accidents on the increase in various places across the nation. So I'm glad to see that we're doing more enforcement on DUIs, and I hope that continues because it a lot of times leads to injury accidents.
So
that
the
we see.
strategy is more enforcement. Do you have anything in the community policing as a preventative measure in the community for DUIs, like getting out that rideshare information, being at events, you know?
We do that all the time. And we also partner with various agencies. In the Virtue Center, we used to go there and talk and give the talks a long time ago. Now they've got a bigger staff and they're fixing to have their ribbon cutting here soon. But they do a lot of the education also. We work hand in hand with those people to try to educate people. And within the school systems, if we ever have those type of talks with them, to say, hey, don't drive drunk, call a friend, do something. Okay, you've been drinking, we get it. We were all kids, but don't drive. Uber's so easy now, and rideshare is even a better thing. Your first 6 rides, even if you're not an OU student. OU students are always free. And even if you're not an OU student, I think your first 6 rides on that program are free. So yes, stressing those type of things are a
And those will
huge
go
help.
up proportionally with enforcement and education? Or were you relying mostly on education during the COVID?
Yes,
Crime?
mainly during COVID, it was a lot of education. We had fewer people out driving because a lot of people were working from home. So now you're starting to pick up and get more people out driving too. We will primarily, we will push enforcement all the time. Educational events are here and there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Foreman?
I was just gonna ask, because that's DUI, public intox, it's a pretty big increase, and we're going SEC. Are we, I guess you guys are preparing and expecting. Bama is gonna go nuts, I don't know.
Yeah, they went to a game. We've went to the different campuses and seen them and seen how they operate. We think we operate good. We do think there'll be a more traveling group, not just on football, but with other athletics. So it is a concern. Most of the groups we think will hopefully behave. Everybody has warned us about LSU. We'll see how that goes when the time comes, but I hope we are prepared. We're working with the other schools to see if there's things they do differently in the law enforcement within those cities, to see if there are things we can do to try to curb that with educational type pushes or with the right type of enforcement.
Councilmember Hall?
On the public intoxication, so what is the criteria for that type of interaction? So want people to not drive if they're at the bar?
Yeah, don't want people to drive if they're out
To a
that.
certain extent, we don't
And yeah,
stall
and
out the
there's
street.
I get it. I understand there are a lot of people intoxicated. Campus corner, downtown, they're out drinking. We get that, and that's not the problem. It becomes a problem when they start causing issues or being a problem, or they are so intoxicated they're stumbling around and can't walk. We're worried about them getting into traffic. There's also ones that are so intoxicated and are refusing, fighting with medical or causing issues that we are called, and we end up arresting them for public intox just to get them somewhere and get them help that they really need that they may not realize they need. And we take them to the hospital, then they get treated for whatever's in their system to get them like they are. And then they would go probably to county jail for a night if they didn't end up getting admitted to the hospital. But it's all 3 of those.
And on public intox and DUIs, would you say, is there data on what substance they are intoxicated by? Is it mostly still alcohol? Is it?
DUIs is probably a lot of alcohol across the nation. You've seen an uptick in various states that have legalized marijuana on driving under the influence of marijuana, but still primarily it is alcohol.
Right. Well, and being under the influence of marijuana, I guess, was it before it was legal, would that have just been classified as being like a DUI or?
Yeah, it could, if you was driving and you were under the influence, yes, we would have, you take you in, if you agree to take the test and you blew a 0, then we would request a blood draw. And you could refuse that or not, whichever way you want to go, but.
Okay. Interesting.
To add to that, prescription meds as well.
That's what I was
Yes, that's
wondering
right,
about
yes.
actually, was prescription medicine. Yeah. Okay.
While we're on the topic of public intox and DUI, there's been some conversations with county, with us about having some kind of sobering center. Can you maybe explain a little bit more about like what that would do to help with some of these incidents, or like have a place for people to go that maybe you don't have to arrest them? Like, what is it an intermediate step, or is it like, explain that to us?
It is sort of an intermediate step, and we have to work through the details on how that works. Generally, when you take somebody to a sober center, we have taken them, and we give them the option. You're arrested. You can either go to jail, and I go ahead and charge you with this, or I can take you to the sobering center. But if I take you there, you're gonna have to stay. You're gonna have to agree to do what they want you to do. Usually, like you go to the jail, you're there 4 hours before they'll let you out on a public intox or a DUI type charge. Sobering centers that we've seen, they keep you a little longer, like about 7 or 8 hours. They want you to stay, and they feed them and give them resources. If they have a drinking problem, they can get help. So it's an overall good thing, and it's a good thing for us because when you go by there, it takes us way less time to drop them off at a sobering center than it would to take them to the county jail and go through the booking process and all of that. So that's the advantage to us, is it's a lot quicker and it still gets the person somewhere safe. So we don't have to worry about them getting out, because if they try to leave there, they'll call us back.
Yeah.
That's sort of how they work.
Well, it sounds to me like having those extra resources is a really key piece of kind of the service that can be provided with a sobering center, because you just go to jail and then you're let out 4 hours later, and there's no services, there's no wraparound, conversation about, hey, maybe you need to think about AA, or you need to think about, some
Exactly.
of these resources that we have in the community, like you mentioned, the Virtue Center and some places that can get you help
Yes.
to recover and all of that. Okay.
Councilmember Grant?
I would say too, if you end up at the sobering center, let's say you're a student, you're not getting charged, it's not affecting your future.
Yes.
And then I would say to add to that, we were talking about an urgent care recovery, which could be the next step for somebody who would need that extra medical detox.
Yeah, like at the hospital, the thing we went to at the hospital. Yes.
I couldn't remember if it was you or Councilmember.
I was gonna ask the same question, actually, so.
Okay. Councilmember Holmes?
I was just going to mention, I mentioned it before, about when former Sheriff Gibson and I went on a field trip to Tulsa in 2019, and we toured their sobering center and the county jail there. The Tulsa PD told us that it took them 8 minutes to check someone into the sobering center, compared to potentially 2 or more hours checking them into the Tulsa County Jail. And that the part of the funding formula was that they calculated the savings of officer hours for dropping someone off there instead of waiting around in the jail, and calculated how much that cost per year. And that was part of how they came up with funding for it, I guess. And they talked about how people who are maybe otherwise not nonviolent or any otherwise wouldn't, by doing this, you could say, I'll take you here and you won't have a criminal record and you'll be out of here. Or if you don't, I'll take you to the county jail and you're going to have a record, and you're going to have to go to court and you're going to have to pay fines. And
So you're advocating for a drive-through window on that?
yes.
Kick 'em in.
Yes. So that was just an experience from up there. It seemed to work where that was 2019. So I'd probably be interested to know how they're doing now. But yeah.
This is collisions. Overall, our reported collisions are up 4%. It's broken down more over to the right, where non-injuries are up 3%, injury collisions are up 8%. Fatalities are down 44%, but that's sort of a deceiving number. We actually put the numbers in there below those percentages. That went from 9 down to 5 so far. this year. This is a big concern of mine on accidents because accidents cause more damage and injure more people than most of our other crime probably combined. So this is a big deal on the quality of life and how things are in our community. So the pickup on enforcement with citations or things is very welcome, and I hope that we are able to continue to increase our efforts to do enforcement and education, the 3 E's. Enforcement and education is what we would do, then engineering on the different things we do to slow people down or.
Better to wake somebody up their freshman year in college than let it go through and the drinking gets worse, the driving gets worse.
Yes.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I'd be interested to see a map of the intersections in Norman that are the most problematic, and if there is a link or correlation between their design, or are they the big wide intersections that we have, are they the busiest ones, and how our street design impacts travel speeds, driver awareness. Those are a lot of things that like Strong Towns talks about, is that street design can influence a lot about how people drive on those streets.
Angela
Whether they-
used to do that.
Whether they drive carelessly or not, or speed, if it encourages them to drive faster than the speed limit. And then, last year in CPTC, I asked city staff to give us a progress report on West Lindsay Street between Berry and I-35. It had been 6 years or 5 since the project had been finished, so we asked them to give us a report on, has the improvements or the widening of it, the median, has that made West Lindsay Street safer? And staff reported that there had been an over 50% reduction in traffic collisions on West Lindsay Street from the 5 years prior to the project being done. And I would remind everybody that before that project was done, West Lindsay Street from Berry Road to 24th Avenue was rated as the #1 traffic collision mile stretch of road in the Oklahoma City metro area. Not for fatalities, but for there being 80 driveways where people can turn in and out, and in front of Classic 50s and Homeland was the #1 spot where people were crashing into each other. Again, low speed because there was so much traffic, and it was low speed traffic congestion. But I think that project, one of the positives about it is it's shown that changes to the design of the street can reduce traffic accidents as one thing that we could look at if we can see where the most of the accidents in Norman are taking place and if there's a relation. So.
Yes, sir.
I actually had a lot of the same thoughts as Councilmember Holman. I had a little different angle. I was curious how much of this was on Highway 9.
Yeah.
We do heat maps, and there's a lot out on Highway 9, particularly spread across there just recently. Major Shattuck, who has patrol, sent some out reminding them, about working traffic out on Highway 9. I think there's a lot of apprehension about that because they know how dangerous it is out there, and it's scary to work traffic out there too. So, but we have to be out there. We got to be working that, and there was a lot of complaints with the most recent fatality out there of how that lanes go there. And we'll be glad when that project is completely done outside of our jurisdiction and it's got more lanes that going all the way out.
Is that gonna give them slow down lanes? Was that part of that? So that you can get off on the side? And slow
Well,
down?
some places will have a turn, but I think it expands it to a 4-lane sort of area.
I've been out there in a
A
while.
little better, yeah.
Be 4 lanes all the way to
Yeah.
Tecumseh, I guess.
Now
Divided
they're
in 4 lanes.
Right past 108th, I think it narrows back down.
Yeah.
This is our overall calls for service over a 5-year period here. This is just through 2022. 2023 data is down below there through July 31st. Up above, it's got officer initiated and citizen initiated. Citizen initiated, I think, is pretty clear. That's people calling us about something. Officer initiated is probably going to be traffic stops or where they pull up on something, a suspicious person, things like that. A lot of it is probably their traffic. But our officer initiated, last year was at 60. So far through July 31st of this year, we're at 50,000 calls compared to the 80,000 last year. I think we're gonna exceed what we had last year on our calls for service data. And it's up 7% so far. So I just think that's the direction we're headed.
Councilmember Holman.
The officer initiated, what, just less people doing stuff that police are noticing, or less?
COVID was one of those things.
Exactly. COVID, they stopped doing traffic as much, so you've seen a drop off on officer initiated contacts.
Seen some comments online, and we've heard some in the chamber about the Norman Police Department has been ordered not to enforce the law.
No,
Is that the
that's
case?
not, no.
Never have.
Have you been told not to take people to the jail to keep it from overcrowding?
No.
Okay. So the decline wouldn't decline, I guess, in an officer initiated isn't because the police department has just decided to.
No, that was a COVID effect. So they stopped doing so much traffic because they didn't want to make contact with people. Probably even suspicious type things that are officer initiated reduced. But you're seeing that starting to come back now. And I predict it will continue to climb until we're back to pre-COVID numbers on those officer initiated contacts.
So it's not an effort by the police department to make it look like there's no crime in Norman or
No.
that anything like that.
No. I mean, I think by when I'm presenting, it's that away. So.
Yeah, and to add on that, right, we were all part of COVID. COVID, I mean, a lot of people stopped going out. You know, we didn't have the traffic we have today, right? Because you wouldn't go to the store, or you go to the store, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't go out to eat, or you wouldn't go to the bars because they were closed, right? So you got to think about our social impact also with that number.
Yeah,
Thank you.
wasn't as much traffic out. So.
Appreciate that clarification.
This is comparing, Councilmember Holman brought up comparing to some other cities. These are easy ones that was to do. It's hard to pull other people's data when there's just not a lot out there. But these were two benchmark cities that's within Oklahoma that we can compare with. There on the left, you got crimes against person per 1,000, and on the right, you've got crimes against property per 1,000.
Being that we're a college town, did we get any comparison to Stillwater on here?
To what?
Stillwater?
No, we don't. It's hard to pull data that's consistent and I can compare apples to apples if I'm just looking at the internet and pulling off what I can. And I didn't want to call and give out their data when they're not giving it out publicly. So I compared to what I had.
Okay. I personally would love to see if we could acquire that data in a public way, they were okay with, just to see how it compares,
Yeah,
how it stacks
and
up.
it's something I can look at the SEC schools where we're
That's-
headed and
I think it's a great,
see how we compare there would be.
because I agree,
Something.
Edmond does have a university, but it's not the University of Oklahoma. It's just little
Right.
apples and oranges, I
Yes.
think so, appreciate that.
Councilmember?
Is there a crime per square mile data point too that exists?
Well, I could divide our whole crime by 100, and we'll look at,
And
Since we're so much larger than those cities too.
yeah, and here is a comparison, because you had brought up the percentage of change in population. Overall, our crime was up 3%, and you did see a 3% increase in our population from 21 to 22. I'm saying that's what it was.
Right.
But there it is, and it tells you the number of authorized sworn and the square miles, which you can see we're at 190, and really in benchmark city comparisons, we're the largest city in square miles of any of them now.
Councilmember Holman pointed out a couple of weeks ago that we're the 50th largest city in the United States,
Yeah.
area-wise. We're just a
Yeah,
dot
it's
on the map.
remarkable. Well, I've mentioned before too that Norman and Tulsa are almost the exact same size in land area, but Tulsa has 410,000 people. We have 130. So it's an interesting way to look at cities, I guess, and how much area we have to cover with police and fire service and every paved road and trash service to the whole city. I mean, everything that it takes to service 200 square miles is just a really unique situation that, as the chief said, we don't have really any other cities to even compare to that are our population, but are massive land area.
Okay, this was, we hear a lot of talk in the downtown area and what has happened. This area on here is, it just encompasses the area, the north side is Acres, the east side is Finley, the south side is Eufaula, and the west side is Flood, I think. And it, over to the side, we see total calls for service in the area did increase from 21 to 23, or 22 to 23, 9%. And reported, the offense reports that we took increased 17%. Just in that little area we've got marked out there.
Do we have numbers from pre-COVID? Like, what is the relation to what was happening before 2020 in downtown?
I don't know. I did not. Right here, you got 21, 22, but I don't have pre-COVID numbers.
Just trying to understand
From
if
like
these were
19
also
or
down,
18,
like you were
19.
saying, for the rest across.
Yeah, you're
and
right,
then we're
yeah.
reaching back up to those. So it,
Very likely
maybe
could
doesn't
be.
look as dire in
Yes.
terms of, now people are out and about, we've got more action
Yes.
going on in downtown, so that increased activity, we're getting back to those
Yes.
similar numbers that we had before.
I think Councilmember Peacock was asking.
Oh,
Just same line of thinking. I'd love to see this graph updated to show maybe 5 years prior to this, just to see how the whole thing's
We can put that
trending.
together. Gary can put it together, and
I just think
I'll send it to the manager, and he can send it out to all of you.
Our existing system right now doesn't, it just has a 3-year, we're limited to that in that, this specific application. I can see what we can
Okay.
possibly done with some additional software or something, but, it's specifically just 3-year. That's the-
Where you can draw the polygon and,
Correct.
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, I just, I think it would give a more colored picture of the overall view, so.
Yeah, where it's headed.
Yeah,
If we're headed back to where we were.
exactly.
Yeah, I was a little bit on the same line of, just because there was a homeless shelter in what is now our development center in 2019, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so would love to know. And then, just a point of clarification, the calls and offenses are not actual convictions. These
That's
could
right.
have also resulted in, this doesn't really check out.
Right. It could have been completely nothing. I mean, that would be the offenses on the bottom side. Could end up being nothing. It could end up that it didn't actually happen here. There's a lot of different outcomes.
So, like, I'm just skipping ahead to the next slide, because I was like, well, how much of those are actually these in there? So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Gary, how far back can you retrieve data for Norman crime?
Well, we have data. Our current system was built, we went live in July of 2015. So realistically, crime data, I have data that goes back further than that, but on our current platform, it's 2015, or really 2016 to get a year full. The issue with this specifically is to draw it and to plot it like that is the application we're dealing with only gives me 3 years.
I'll be kind of wondering about just an overall crime rate graph going back several decades, actually. Based on nationally, the crime rate was much higher in the 1970s and 80s and early 90s than it is today, and saw a significant decline throughout the late 90s and 2000s, and since has seen an increase from what I understand. This is information I've read pretty extensively, but do we have Norman data specific that goes back like that?
When I arrived here in 1996, so 27 years ago, the way crime data was kept, it was ugly. Needless to say, and we're talking prior DOS, right? So the best data I have is to go back and look at crime data through OSBI and their methods of how we do things today comparatively speaking to 30 years ago, totally different. So I don't know how well we're going to compare apples to apples.
Right, yeah.
But we have we've participated in the Benchmark City survey. We were one of the first agencies to do that across the country. So much so that IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police Association, they have kind of adopted our benchmark process, if you would, to try to get other agencies to come on board with sharing data like that.
And they started the mid-sized cities group because of our benchmark cities.
It'd be interesting to know.
So
Yeah.
I have crime data back in the 90s through annual reports and stuff like that, but I don't have specific details, a lot of specific details. And just to update, the crime reporting was based off UCR, which Uniform Crime Reporting, which Chief talked about earlier. That's a hierarchical system. So if I had a murder and a assault, the murder would only be getting reported, nothing else would get reported. Today, what you're seeing on offenses is we report everything. So any kind of crime that you have that occurred within an incident or within a time occurrence or a place occurrence, we're gonna categorize that for you.
Okay. So you could maybe look at homicide or violent crime in Norman over the last 20, 30, maybe 30 years.
Awesome.
Might be interesting to know. I appreciate the information.
Yes, sir.
And that's one thing I'd like to see too is actual like violent crime or assault with weapons. Because 2 homicides is an amazing statistic for a city our size. But the reality is, I mean, we had an officer shot at the apartments down here. We've had numerous drive-bys. My kid's school went on lockdown because a guy with a hammer decided to get into a fight with a guy with a firearm. So I mean, so many of those could have ended. One pump gets lucky.
Yes.
So yeah,
And Gary, he's, I don't know, since '99, he used to compile, crime data on sheets that compared year to year to year. But there is a difference if you're looking overall that it's not going to compare all that. But we may be able to pull out specific like homicides or.
assault with deadly weapon.
Aggravated
That's what I like to see.
assault.
Like
Yeah, assault with deadly weapon has changed, but
DUI is the same though, isn't it?
yeah, DUIs would be the same. Yes.
DUI has a little changed, right?
Oh, has
'Cause
it?
used, the alcohol, the value, blood alcohol content.
Oh, yeah.
It used to be 4, yeah, 1.
1, yeah, and then it went to 8.
Now it's gone
Oh,
1.8. So I mean, there's things like that have changed, right? But we're constantly looking at new innovative ways to capture data and share it. So we're open to any suggestions y'all have, and I'm all about trying to make the process work for all of us.
Thanks, Gary.
Whoever was first.
Do we keep any data on like repeated callers? So like people who are calling a lot, or like, do we have any idea of those calls of service, like how many of them are repeat calls from the same people? Like, are we keeping any of that data?
I mean, I'm assuming they could search notes or.
Yeah, it becomes real difficult because think about what we're really intention of calling 911. I mean, it's the intention for that dispatcher is to get the information as fast as they can and as concise as they can, so they can then in turn give the next person to have a dispatch so we can arrive and take care of the issue. So data quality goes out the window when you're calling 911. And so for us to go back and kind of search that becomes problematic. Now you will see we can look at addresses, but today you might live there, tomorrow you might not.
Right. Or I'm
So-
calling from somewhere else.
Exactly.
Because I'm out and
Cell
about.
phones give us the ability to call anywhere, so
And we've
it becomes challenging.
Yeah.
We have
okay.
had people that, call 911 a lot, and we know it's same caller, same caller, same caller, and we deal with those people, but other than that, it's hard to tell from here to
I
there.
appreciate like understanding the process.
Process
Yeah.
is huge.
Yeah.
The data accuracies is huge, along with the process and the timeliness.
Yeah.
In our environment, those three things are huge in what we do on a daily basis.
My thoughts are very similar to Councilmember Schuler's, and the reason I'm so interested in this data is because we keep hearing this narrative that crime is exploding across Norman, and I'd really just love to be able to drill down into that. And I just don't feel like the numbers that we have here, I get those numbers we have today, but I think it paints one picture when in reality, it might not be as dire straits as Councilmember Schuler said. So I think getting the full stack of data would really help.
Does total reported, offenses reported, would that include, say, if multiple people called about the same incident that was occurring?
No,
at
that,
moment, or would that count as one?
that's one call
Okay.
for service. You're talking about just calls that's coming into the
People see
communications
something,
center.
And then 10 people
Yeah,
call
that's just
911 at the
calls
same
coming
time.
into the communications center where, they may have 200,000 calls that come in a year.
Sure.
But the actual calls for service is, 80,000 or whatever. This is the calls for service involving unhoused individuals, and this is a very new thing for us just because of the number of people that were asking about it. So there's nothing, I don't know, this is probably low compared, because we just started collecting this and we're trying to get everybody to do it and to mark that it was an unhoused individual on that call. But we have no data to compare this to going back. So I can't compare year to year here. So
Mine was just gonna be, so these are just calls, right? People are just calling. Do you have a number? Is it next on how many arrests?
yes.
Okay.
Well, locations, yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my question is about how are you reporting this, I guess? Like, is it asking the person if they are unhoused, or taking the word of the person that has called to say that this person is unhoused? Like, what is the accuracy of
This is just based
keeping
on
this data?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. This is two different things.
Okay.
There's the people that call and what they say, but also on call dispositions. When an officer gets done with a call, there's a drop down and it has various things there. And one of them is to mark now that it was an unhoused individual they were dealing with. So it's sort of a dual system. We're still refining it. That's why I'm telling you, I don't think this is necessarily perfect.
Yeah.
And we don't have any prior years to compare to. So this is just what we have and can discern from what we have.
So-
To follow up with that, again, very challenging in this environment to collect this. This is not just Norman, Oklahoma data collection issue, it's all across the country.
Everybody wants to do this. I mean,
Mental health, the homeless, the unhoused, any kind of weapon involved, because it could be a traffic stop call, or it could be a suspicious person call to a trespassing call, or a disturbance or domestic call. So all of these can encompass multiple of those call types. So again, very challenging across the nation. I attend conferences across the nation, and we're trying to figure this out.
and along with our benchmark cities. So,
Yeah, so it sounds like you're kind of in the process of figuring out how to, I guess, encapsulate this data in a way that is going to be helpful moving forward, and kind of some of it is like a training, right, for the officers. Like, this is a new feature, a new
Yes,
statistic
exactly.
that they have
We
to
gotta get them
record,
doing
and so
things.
it's
Yes.
going to take some time to actually get maybe some more accurate.
yeah, and then
Data.
be able to tell, okay, we've sort of benchmarked, this is what we have. Is it getting worse or getting better?
Okay.
Councilmember Hall?
So far this year, 2023, 50,311 total calls for service. And total number of calls for service involving unhoused individual, 2023, 2,736, which equals 5.4% of all calls have been for unhoused persons. So it seems like a real small percent of calls have been involving unhoused
mean,
people.
Yes.
We're
I mean,
hearing
it
it's like
depends on how you're
90%
looking
and
at it.
100%. And
If
that
I,
every arrest every day is an unhoused
yeah,
person.
if I'm looking at, right, if I'm looking at the number of unhoused individuals, which on our last count, I think total that had temporary housing or whatever, was it like 213? And that's generating that many calls as compared to the same number of people that may be like in an apartment complex. Well, do I have the same number of calls at that apartment complex that have that same number of people compared to this? You know, there's a lot of ways we can compare that. That will be going forward as we get some benchmark data and sort of see where we're at, and we move on with it. And this will get better. We'll get better data going forward.
And you mentioned that other police departments are good.
Everybody's talking about this.
Do you know of others, more Oklahoma
Larger
City,
cities,
Edmond, are
medium-sized
starting-
cities.
Are Oklahoma City and Tulsa and Edmond maybe, or Broken Arrow, would they be having this potential data point too?
I don't, maybe Edmond and Broken Arrow being part of the benchmark could move this away, but just looking at Edmond, they don't have a lot, so it may be when we meet with benchmarks, and we meet annually, that they go, well, we don't want this to be a data point in our data. It's not important enough to enough of the agencies. When you get mid-sized, larger, you're starting to see it. So other people we talk to are looking for this.
Tulsa and Oklahoma City probably will, I would guess.
I would guess too, that it could be something they would look at.
I agree. It's hard to tell what this means without being able to compare it to
Yes.
other years. So it'd be good to know next year what.
Yeah, how it's looking, has it reduced? Are we doing, yeah.
Okay.
So it's 2,736 calls for service. Is that 2,736 contacts? Because sometimes the officer might show up, right, and there's no suspects around. Is that how many contacts were made, or just how many calls were made?
This is.
This is
how-
all, so,
Okay.
but it could be both.
Sure.
So this is specifically looking at the call narrative, so what somebody has called and told us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a homeless or unhoused
Right.
person. All right, so I'm trying to scrape that data out for us.
Oh, sure.
As well as if it's just, they didn't say that and we show up, the police department shows up and identifies this person as unhoused,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, I'm trying to take the broad perspective here and just try to give you what we can at this point. But it
So it's not necessarily contact. So to say you don't like
Yes.
homeless people, you can just keep calling the police department to try to
Correct.
drive up calls and numbers
yeah, no,
to
this is not,
skew data. Okay.
yeah, you are correct.
Okay.
Okay, calls for service. The shelter locations come up a lot. Here's the actual calls for service to those locations. Now, what I'll explain, in 21 and 22, down there at the bottom for a friend's place over here, you know, we only had them operational in November and December of those 2 years. But the other two, for Food and Shelter and Salvation Army, that is for an entire year. The 2023 data is just as of August 10th, so from January through August 10th.
This should come as no surprise. I want to ask for more data. I'd love to see what the Comanche shelter numbers were and what the shelter over at the development center numbers were as well, just by comparison.
Yeah.
So, just so I understand it correctly, in 2023 so far, at a friend's place, and I mentioned that one since we're funding it, there have been 99 police calls for service.
Yeah, this is the calls for service.
Okay. Out of 50,311, that's
Right.
0.19% have been police response. Of all police calls in the city of Norman this year, 0.19% have been to a friend's house, if I'm reading this correctly. Okay. Thank you.
I'm obviously skipping ahead. So I think that's interesting, the number of calls versus when you get to these other slides that are the actual reports, those go down, and the same for arrests. Those also So that seems like these are just calls.
These are just calls for service, exactly. This one, as you said, these are the actual reports that were taken for the locations. And yeah, they go down from the calls for service to the reports that was taken.
Man, yeah, so
You can see the type of the reports at the bottom.
about a quarter.
And then as you move to the arrest, they continue, there's fewer of them. And the types of things are at the bottom, again, there, of the most frequent of those.
Go ahead.
So, like an ingredients list, is the first one the major one? Like, is drug violations the majority of these?
Oh, no, I don't think those are in any order at the bottom. It's just picked out what we see in most, coming up there.
Do you know which one's kind of leading?
Not off the top of my head, so when we pulled those are the ones that categorize the bulk of them, but I don't have the percentage of them.
Okay, thank you.
How many total arrests have there been in Norman this year? Just the whole city?
I do not know.
It'd be an interesting one, I assume.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
2023, it looks like on-view arrest is about 2,067.
In the whole city?
Or total 3,227 as of, this is July.
3,200.
You're working that calculator hard there, woman.
So at a friend's house, we've had 20 arrests this year. And of the total arrests in Norman, that's 0.61% of total arrests in the city of Norman this year have been at a friend's house.
So something that's interesting on the calls for service for police only, if you annualize the 2023 numbers, if the trend continues, the Salvation Army at the end of this year will have 167 calls. And Food and Shelter is projected to have 505. So still something I found interesting. Yeah, this is really good information. And going back to that map, it would be cool to have that and to see that data pre-COVID, just because from my business valuation experience, when I've seen trends in businesses where things have gone up, 2020 it's taken a nosedive, and then their business just shoots through the roof in 2022 and 2023.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to see.
Yeah.
So, are there any other businesses or organizations here in Norman that you know of that had 20 arrests pulled out of a single address? I mean, Walmart,
I mean,
another shoplifting.
yeah, maybe Walmart on a shoplifting like docket type
A
things.
business that has 10,000 people coming in and out of it a day.
Yeah.
So, and this is a place that has 150 people. I mean, thank you.
I think that's, okay. Staffing levels. That has been on a rebound. We've been doing better on our recruiting and,
What does better mean, Chief?
well, it just means that we're getting more people applying.
Excellent.
And it seems that more people are making it through the process to come to an interview, to have the ability to be hired. So that's good, and I think that's probably, part of that credit is due, when we lost the 9 positions, one of those positions was the recruiter. We have restored the recruiter since those 9 have come back. We put the recruiter in place pretty immediately, even though we didn't have the people back onto the street. And it seems that it has definitely picked up on the number of applications that have come in. Right now, we are at, on here, it tells you how quickly these can happen. Because right here, I have 169, but actually I think we're at 166. Because I've had 3 more people leave, maybe 2, maybe 1 was included on this. So maybe 167 is what I have actual staffing. We're authorized 180. So we have about 13 vacancies right now, 13 or 14 vacancies. However, you've also got to consider that I still have 10 in the academy down there. I've got 2 up at the VOTEC in that program. I've got some in field training. I've got 5 people deployed military long-term. I've got people on long-term or, longer-term OJIs. And then you've got some that are longer-term sick. They're just out. It was an injury that wasn't on the job. That brings me down to around 143 people that are deployable or able to do their assignment, able to be on assignment. So as we recover and we get people trained and out on the field, and hopefully we can maintain those numbers, having an academy yearly or a couple of times a year if we need to keep that going.
So about the people making it through, that's one of the things that I've noticed over the last few years is that we would have initial number of applicants that we let go through the academy, and then ending up with like 3 or 4 at the end, several that couldn't make it through or quit or whatever it was. Is it because we have a higher standard than other, or are they just not ready, or what factors go into
Several different
Yeah.
factors go into that. You'll see, some people just decide once they go through a, homicide or accident investigation or domestic scenarios, they decide, ooh, this isn't for me. I can't do this. Some, it is maybe physical fitness. And it's not that we're cutting them. It's just they don't want to come down there and do the work and decided, I don't want to work this hard. This job isn't for me. Some get into field training and their decision-making abilities and judgments aren't the best, so they don't make it through field training. So that's where we lose them. We started with 12 in the academy and we're at 10 right now.
Do you set the standard for what's required to be
Yes.
a Norman police officer? That's your
Yes.
call. How do you balance? It's hard to get employees. It's hard in a lot of industries, but specifically police. And you want to not be so restrictive you can't get anybody in, but you also don't want to lower your standards to where you don't have good quality people
Right.
in your department. So how do you?
Yeah, it's the
balance
quality
that
of the
type
people, but also something that's in my mind is if I don't prepare them as well as I possibly can when they get out here on the street and something happens to them, well, that's on me. Or if I gave them the best training I can, the best possible that they could get anywhere, well, then I feel that I've done everything I can.
So Councilmember Holman, we would highlight that the most expensive bad hire a city can make is to hire a police officer who is not of the highest caliber. And we have had instances in the academy where the person's smart enough and they meet all of the physical requirements, and then there's a part where you got to go in there and they teach you how to put hands on people, and you might get punched in the nose. And for people who have never ever been punched in the nose, they might decide right there at that moment that if that could happen at work for real, that's not a thing that I want to do. And we've watched them walk away after they had to go put hands on each other, in their academy class and dressed in sweats and ready to go. And it is, I think it can be an eye-opening experience for somebody who's, lived a pretty comfortable life and never got into a hand-to-hand kind of a situation. So lots of reasons, and the staff takes an interest in recognizing what's happening in the academy and how many people are getting through, and very conscious of where we're recruiting to make sure we're casting a wide net. We have female candidates in the academy, and we've got academy folks from all kinds of different backgrounds. And I think the efforts in having multiple academy opportunities, making it as accessible as possible is helping. And when we see an issue that that particular issue in our program is causing us a problem. A lot of people are not clearing that hurdle. Let's go look at the hurdle and see, has it changed? Are we changing, or is our applicant pool changing? One of the things the chief has done is in those conversations about, will we allow facial hair? Will we allow tattoos to be visible? They're a lot more common in society today, and there are agencies that will say, no visible tattoos, you're out. And we're okay with a tattoo. We'll put you to work. So
So-
they've been very proactive in that respect.
So I know we don't have like a nice shiny new police station like some other cities around us do, but we have allocated a lot of resources to the police department over the last few years.
Absolutely. And that allocation, just this last
Yeah.
year of what we've got there, I think both here now, it helped with morale tremendously. And I still think that helped our recruiting efforts.
That's what I was gonna say.
They
we-
saw the
letting them know
support.
that
Yes.
this is why you should come to Norman instead of going to these other cities.
Yes.
Is that we're making these improvements we have. and
Yeah, it was an
stuff.
incredible amount that the council invested in us, and this is the equipment we have. I definitely think that has helped our recruiting. It's good.
Councilmember Farmer?
Okay. I'm old, I had to write it down. Okay, I have a few questions, Chief. How many patrol units do you have on each shift?
Patrol, it varies from day to day, but
What's your skeleton number? What's the lowest you can go?
what's our numbers, Jamie?
What exactly are you asking for?
Patrol.
Like how many
many's
patrol units?
out on the street
Yeah.
during a particular shift?
So on a daily basis, I think our minimum staffing is 10 on a day shift, 14 on afternoons, and 10 on nights.
Do supervisors ever go on patrol, or are they in-house?
No supervisors go out and they help take off.
That includes that number?
It does not.
Okay.
It's just patrol officers.
I don't like that, that's low. Okay, what are the overlap hours of the different shifts?
So the day shift starts at 6:30 and they work till 4:30.
Mhm.
And then afternoon shift comes on at noon, they work till 10. So there's an overlap there.
Where it's more? Mhm.
And then fourth shift, which is our power shift, they come in at 4:30. They work till 2:30, so there's another overlap when day shift comes. And then night shift comes on at 9 and they work till 7.
Okay, the overlaps make me feel better, but the in-betweens are dangerously low to me.
So we overlap pretty much all day from noon
Yeah.
until 9:30 at night, or actually until
The
2:30 in
highest
morning.
time.
Yeah, highest call volume.
Yeah.
We don't have any overlaps.
Yeah, okay,
That over that time counts for some training time, other character.
Right.
Maintenance, report writing, a lot of that other stuff.
Yeah, and we're constantly evaluating
sure.
of everything we do, from recruiting
Mhm.
to, our scheduling to, how we do the job.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's constant, we constantly want to better ourselves all the time and better the community.
Right, right.
Still
We're just
human.
really
We
big.
make mistakes.
I
but
know, but we're
we
really
try
big
to do
city,
better.
and
Absolutely.
we're so huge, and I mean, that makes me happier to hear, like, most of the time, we may have, like, 20 people, like, from each shift, is that right, or, right? Like, if there's 10 on a
During
shift,
overlap, yeah.
so during the overlap.
Yeah, overlaps would be good.
Right, so that's helpful, but I still think that's even probably too low for the size that we are geographically. And we need 2 stations. I've said that, but and I really think we need that. But
Well,
okay.
Public safety.
I know
study.
my
And
Study
maybe even
one.
the status on the RFP for the public safety study, chief,
it's out, right?
it's back.
It's back. Ooh.
Well,
Quite bad.
Oh, okay. Darn.
we've gotten,
Responses.
yes,
You've
we've
got
gotten
responses.
responses.
Just a real quick overview, we scoured the country, really identified the top 18 to 20 vendors that do this.
Mhm.
From that, we received, go back and look to confirm, but we received roughly 6 to 8
Mhm.
that actually submitted proposals. We've started to narrow that down, and we have proposals from the top 3. Those are going to occur with the selection committee over the next probably 2 weeks.
Mhm.
So I'm hopeful that we can do our due diligence and have something identified by October 1st.
Yay.
Work with that and then bring it to
Mhm.
council shortly after that. So
That's good.
3 really good companies that we're really excited about.
I'm glad. I'm excited.
Councilmember?
Just to ask one question to that, is the selection committee, is that an ad hoc, or what is the structure of that one?
Yeah, so we got police and fire since it's a dual resource study, so we both have a police and the fire point of contact, so that's me, and then the battalion chief on the fire side. The other two that we have that are external, we have Bill Scanlon. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bill. Super, he knows police and fire, public safety better than a lot of people. Super involved. The other side is Dan Munson. He's been involved with the city of Norman. He is very analytical.
Ward 6, yeah.
Both of them.
I feel like we're in good hands there.
And the last person is Lisa Craig. Lisa is fantastic in all things related to RFPs and all of that. So it's a super great team, and they've done some exceptional work on that.
For Bill Scanlon and Dan Munson, is it because they are serving on something already on the city, or was this process open to the public to apply?
Public, no. We really needed somebody with some institutional knowledge that could really unpack and understand the concepts. These proposals are very, very detailed as I'm learning through this process. And both Bill and Dan have been involved in a variety of things and worked through that.
So they didn't have to put an application in?
No.
Okay. Next question is, how many officers were terminated for not following policy? I assume it's a rare event, but how rare is it when we talk about like rebound and reallocation?
Terminated as in, we'll have some that will come out of field training that we will move them to an employment status hearing. Now that person could resign before it gets to the point of us having to terminating, if that was decision. But there are people that have left during field training that may not have been terminated,
That might have been in the future.
but might have been.
Would you say that's like 1 to 2 a year that kind of?
And out of field training,
No, well, I'm talking
Oh,
more
overall?
about like once they're passed
could-
and they're in the field and you're like,
yeah,
you know
once they're
what,
in the
this isn't
field,
working out.
we have terminated people just for various reasons. And also some of them are the same way that I'm telling you. They're seeing that that's the likelihood that it's going that direction. So they resign. But then we still report that to CLEAT. So we send something to CLEAT saying, hey, this person resigned under investigation. So if they try to go to another department, at least CLEAT knows.
Could we have a number on those who don't make it? I'm kind of curious if those folks, you know, like when we say that we need to get back to full staff, I'm sure some of those people are why we're not there. And the other question I had to do with the slide, because I was interested in your investigations use of wraparound services. Sorry, is the one we were on.
Right here. Yeah,
And
I'll
the-
get to that, yes.
Yeah, utilization of community outreach and partnerships. Very curious.
Yeah. Investigations, the wraparound services is, we have a,
Half a second, did you have another question?
I did about the staffing, and it was about the non-patrol staffing, so the support staff of the police department. Last time I went on a ride-along, it was overnight, and there wasn't anybody working at the desk, I guess, and we were trying to find some paper, we were opening up all these drawers, and couldn't find it. And, an officer mentioned that it would be helpful to have that person. Is that something you're looking to try to fill? Is it a priority? Is it a need? And then I know due to space, we can't add 2 more dispatchers until the EOC is finished, but other than that, is there other
we've got
stuff?
space for the dispatchers, and we added the other 2 out of PSST this year. So they'll come on, we'll get them trained, so they'll be ready
Ready
when
to
we
go
go
when
to
we
this
get in. Yeah,
location.
right.
Records, yeah, we would love to have more people up there, but we have to pull people out of there to help with redaction. We've got a full-time redactionist, which that's empty right now. We're gonna have to hire somebody, but the old one is still helping us do that job. So redaction is huge because there's a lot of people wanting a lot of things that they do. So based on us having to pull people from records to do that, also, while we used to have hours on the weekend during the day, we're cutting that back and just going to go, normal working sort of hours during the week, Monday through Friday. I mean, there'll still be somebody there on game day Saturdays and things like that to do impounds that may, you know, how they park by the railroad tracks or whatever, so they can get their car back. We'll have somebody in records for those days, but generally not. And I do remember back in the days that you're talking about, we used to have records clerks there overnight, and that was great because it kept probably what you were doing there with Lieutenant probably.
Yeah.
Is you have to go in and you do the bond outs or you do the releases for a car that was impounded during the night, and you've got to figure out how to do it, how much am I going to take, and what forms I'm supposed to fill out. They've got to do that. It'd be great to have records clerks there overnight.
And just the time the officers
Right.
spending in there instead of out on the street, yeah. Okay, well, that's kind of what I was wondering, is a lot of focus on patrol officers and uniforms, but not a lot of discussion about what about the rest of the support staff
Yes.
of the department.
Yeah, it's hard to keep dispatch full.
Right.
People leave there, you know, sort of like officers.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how hard that job is, but,
Yeah.
okay, thanks.
Investigations. Again, this year we was fortunate enough to get that grant for our licensed master social worker. And what that allows us to do is having that person on staff also allows us to have interns from OU help us out also. So that's even more to provide the wraparound services for the victims of crime. Contacting them, telling them about other services, helping them get through things as victims of crime. And that grant, we were really worried because that's how it went in the budget, as if we would have the grant still. That area, they're getting less money each year. So I'm worried it won't continue. And it's a tough thing to get that. We really didn't think we was going to get it again this year. But I think what won that over for us is we take our licensed master social worker. She's there with us to talk to the board that's making those decisions on that grant, as well as a professor from the University of Oklahoma. They're really the two that won that for us, I think. So it was great to have those partnerships with the university and to have that person on staff because it adds staffing by having those interns there also to help us out with wraparound services on that side for victims of crime.
Along with that, again, back to data, it's very, very challenging. That's a new program, new person that really historically across the nation, police departments don't have, right? And so getting that data, trying to obtain her data that the people that she talks to and the work she's doing to be able to relay that to the grantor is again, we're constantly trying to reinvent ways to do it better.
How much is the grant for?
I think it covers 50% or
I think it's 75%. I think the grant's 75.
75 and we pay 25.
Yes.
But like how much money
Oh,
total?
it's maybe like
What
70,
is the cost of that
70,
program?
$70,000.
Okay. And you would say that, I mean, it's been, really important to have that type of relationship and like to have someone like that on staff?
Yes, we
Working
hadn't
with our
had somebody like that, and
victims of crime?
yes, it's a service that we had never provided. Now, they have victim services over at the district attorney's office. This goes beyond that. That sort of helps them with maybe funding, getting victims, money to recover.
She's absolutely critical in ending that cycle, right? So we talked about earlier some of the homicides, the domestics, things like that are very challenging. There's long-term root causes that are related to that are beyond the scope of law enforcement in a traditional capacity. She fills that void. She additionally, like we had her at a trial just this week, the last 2 days, helps those victims that domestic violence in particular, very strong hesitation, big danger to step away from that, but especially to get to addiction, to get to those EPOs, to get those other standards. And she helps get them in those places that they're comfortable working with the DA's office. And on a lot of our cases, there's a lot of really nasty things that happen to people that there aren't criminal components for, or we don't know, and can't prove who that is, and she fills that void. So she does a tremendous job doing that and reaching out to people. We had a lobby just last week with a very upset person who didn't really want to talk to him, but he couldn't really bridge that gap. Within about 5 minutes, she would bridge that gap and kind of calm them down, realize that, hey, your friends are here to help protect you and try to get you the gap. So a tremendous outreach. We'd love to have about half a dozen of them.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say that whenever I was working at OU, I volunteered with their OU Advocates program, which was kind of their advocates for, anybody on campus, student, faculty, staff, that, experienced gender-based violence, sexual assault, harassment, any of those types of things. And I know from, not being a social worker, but we were trained in some of the ways to advocate and to help victims through kind of the processes for campus, and then, working alongside OUPD and NPD. Like, I know how critical of that service is for people that are experiencing, crime and, victims of crime. So I would go out on a limb and say, like, yes, please keep applying for the grant, but I think that is something that is critical that you are doing in that partnership, that, like, if that grant money goes away, I would be in favor of funding that program moving forward. Because I do think that it is absolutely critical for people in our community and to help serve, the police officers, that then that work is not on y'all to do that, and you have someone that's trained specifically to do that work. So just want to kind of put that out there.
That was going to be my comment, was don't worry about a grant. I think that's something that council would enthusiastically support supplying fund to. And I was going to even go further, is it possible, city manager, pay attention to me?
I'm with you.
No, I'm just kidding.
I am so with you.
You're so with me. Would it be possible even now, like, as we're talking about it? I mean, I don't know about half a dozen, but maybe like a second one.
Well, and I'll tell you, the magic is finding the person.
Sure.
And the right skill set and personality, and they're not training them near fast enough coming out of the university for that need to be met. I think we provide a real career opportunity. I think if you come to work in this capacity in the police department, you probably make more than you do doing that kind of social work activity in a lot of the nonprofits around town. So at least the relationship exists now with the university, and I think we would have a really good shot at grabbing the next great talented graduate coming our way to be able to train them up. But we see
Bring it
dividends
forward.
being paid.
Bring it forward.
Councilman Peacock.
Same thoughts. If the grants were to expire, I definitely support pursuing how we fund this long term. So,
Councilman Grant.
I was curious about, do you know why the grants are harder to get
Their funding was cut. So
from
was
the feds? Or like, who's supplying the funding? Is it
Yes,
the
I think
state?
it is federal money or state money.
They also, they have a huge number of resources they provide things to within those grants. And they're always looking at seed, so we're kind of newer into this, they're looking for new programs to develop.
So are they not impressed by the outcomes
Oh, no,
to
they
keep
are.
funding?
They are. That's what keeps us getting it.
We just redid ours, they only asked like one question. I think we're super happy, very grateful where we're at. We didn't have a whole lot of hesitation in this round.
Okay.
Our concern is that if we have the ability to fund it long term, if we're not adding an internship program or something else to that piece, then they're
So
more
a
of
dedicated
root cause
funding
to look in the
source.
ground and like an incubator kind of thing.
Yeah, or more people will catch on to our idea, and they will start hooking up with other universities to do the same thing, which will,
I guess I'll go ahead and ask it just because why not? Civil asset forfeiture, how much usually comes in a year?
it just varies. It depends on what you may get. I mean,
Is it
we
like
just had the 1.3 that we
100,000?
did the cars
Yeah, well,
with,
that's
so
sat for a minute, but,
pretty empty,
did you
but-
say 100,000 a year or so?
oh yeah.
How much does one of these licensed master social workers cost?
You're about there.
About 7.
Probably about 100,000.
Is that something you can spend that on?
But I don't.
It would be.
I thought it was a personnel thing. You can't.
Yeah,
It was like
that's the
That's what I was
thing.
asking.
recurring
Is
Why not?
personnel
Yeah.
is funded with something that's sporadic.
So it could be that as supplemented by the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious about a source. So.
Yeah.
CAF fund could be used if we want to use it. For anything we want.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Community outreach and partnerships. The thing that I want to stress, you know about a lot of our outreach and the things that we're involved in, and off our general presentation that we do to the community about all the things we do, but something that has changed unique because of council and the 9 positions that are coming back. You wanted those to go to a community policing, community outreach group. We have put 3 people over there specifically for more of a public outreach. So it's more, they'll do enforcement, they'll work cases, but it's more they're talking to the people. They go out and talk to people in the neighborhoods and areas to determine who's doing what. Who do you see as the person that's causing the problems? And then they address those people and those that's causing the problems according to the people that's out there. Rather than like our old method of, I put 10 cops in this area and I stop everybody, and it doesn't make a lot of people happy because they're getting stopped too. So the approach, I think, is working tremendously. We're doing much better and not hurting relationships with people in the community, and we're gaining relationships with people in the community.
And then hopefully when we're fully staffed, that program will grow closer to the 9 or 10 bodies instead of the 3 currently assigned.
Yes,
Probably
yeah.
more into policing is what we're doing. Specific is more surgical than what we've done in the past.
I just maybe you know about some of it, but I remember talking to a community policing officer who would go into Hispanic communities and build trust, so that those folks who generally wouldn't come forward with crimes would actually talk and say, hey, my kid's being abused, or I'm being abused. So that's the community policing. Do you have other examples of that kind of work?
Still do that, yeah, but on that, you have Jeff. It would be great to get more language speakers, Spanish and...
Is it Farsi for the Afghanis that are?
Yeah, now we have Ollie, yes, we have Ollie that is in that community. More of Asian speaking languages is what could
Vietnamese,
benefit us a lot.
Chinese.
Now, recently, that's a Spanish speaking, but we use the entire city on resources. And we had one lady call records, Spanish speaker, and we called somebody else in the city because we didn't have anybody working that spoke Spanish at the time. And that person in another part of the city, which is Anthony's part, she was able to assist us and determine she really wasn't wanting help from us. She was more looking for immigration, ICE enforcement. So we got her to the people that she really wanted to talk to that did the type of things that she wanted.
Interesting. Thank you.
This is one of the reasons why I kind of wanted you to talk about this. You don't have to give away your whole strategic plan of addressing crime if people are watching, but we can talk about data and numbers or what percent or less than a percent of crime or whatever, but perception that people have or the way they feel is the way it is, whether it's fully justified or not. So that's why I kind of wanted you to talk about what the police department is doing to address strategically a lot of the concerns from the community we hear. If people are afraid to walk down certain streets or be downtown or wherever it may be, that the police department is aware that people feel that way and has plans of how to, not just we're going to add more officers, but through either the utilization of the community outreach or increased focus on strategic proactive enforcement, all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Community outreach and just working with our partner agencies, the continuing of care agencies, the various agencies we work with to address these problems, because there's a lot of things we can't address in the problem or in the community. There's certain things we can do and we can't do. And I understand that some people are fearful of just seeing certain people and they're scared of them.
Sure.
There's not a lot I can do about that. Now, when they're doing something, I can react to that. I can arrest people. I can write tickets, dockets, whatever we feel is the most effective in the situation. The other thing that you got to keep in mind is we can't arrest for a misdemeanor not committed in our presence unless it's maybe like on an accident. We could write a ticket, different things like that. Somebody else has to sign that docket if they're going to call us about somebody doing something that's a misdemeanor crime. They sign the docket, we can sign that, we can issue it to the person, and they can go to court here. The other thing is, within the court, you have mediation, different ways for things can be handled between neighbors. You have services as far as outreach at the municipal court level and at the county court level on connecting people to services. So they could get, if we get somebody on a charge, they try to hook them with services and make sure that if we can divert them out of the criminal justice system, we do, so they don't continue down the path they're on. We try to get them the help they need, so it's not a continuing problem. I don't want to just keep arresting the same person over and over and over. Getting them the actual help they need to address the core problem would be much more, it would provide for a quicker remedy, on reducing the number of people that's doing things rather than just putting them back on the street every time.
Is that a problem that you feel is the Norman police are dealing with? Is you are making arrests of certain individuals and they go to the county jail, but then they're released the next day or that week, and then you're
Yes.
arresting them again and again?
Yes.
And just like a revolving door? I mean, that
Well,
would be...
I wouldn't say revolving door, but you do see the same people over and over. And I mean, that's even when we arrest them for, like auto theft or larceny. Well, they bond out, they're back out here doing the same thing again until they're held for a longer time. So that's all, what is the best solution? What's going to work the best? And that's what I think every community struggles with.
And I think that's community-wide, right? I mean, we as police department is one piece and part of that component, but it takes all of us. I mean, without citizens calling in and telling us what's going on, we wouldn't know. We couldn't go respond. So, it's a whole entire community organization that we have to depend on.
That is something I would say also is, I don't want as Councilmember Grant brought up, I don't want people afraid to call us for help. The other thing is I don't want people thinking, I don't want to call you because you're just too busy. We are busy and it's stacked in there and it may be a while to response, but at least I know what's going on. We can deploy resources better when we know what crime's happening where. So even if it's an online report and you're doing it, at least we know that a crime is occurring in this certain area.
And that's what the police department does currently. You allocate patrols where you believe, based on your data, are the areas of the city that need more or less? Is that...
Yes,
like
we'll
if
have
4-5
somebody
is asking
all
for more
over
patrol,
town.
Do you just
But-
do it because they're asking, or do you say, well, there's
But
only
they
been this
can-
many calls out there, it doesn't really merit, or how do you determine that? I guess?
Right. The larger the area, the fewer, as the fewer calls, the larger the area is going to get. But also, if there's a problem, we're going to try to put people or resources, whether it be undercover, whatever we need when we have them, and address those problems as we can.
So Chief, like car thefts, if a lot of car thefts are taking place in a certain neighborhood, there are gonna be a lot more patrols passing through those neighborhoods than there are if there's no reports
Yes.
of car thefts, for example.
Yeah.
And is that effective too? Where, what I mean by that is like, there's concerns about safety or crime at Andrews Park, which is right next to the police department.
Right.
And then neighborhood in my ward, Cedar Lane neighborhood, where quite a few officers live. I think there's a marked patrol car on almost every street and one driveway or another. And yet there have been a lot of like car break-ins and things in that neighborhood. So does just the mere presence of police act
No.
as a deterrent, or
It's
does it for
just-
a little bit and then?
I don't know that it's the presence. I guess seeing the people may deter people from doing something right there, right then, but they'll just wait on us to pass. The idea is we're going to,
Always.
we'll see who's there, we'll catch certain people doing certain things while on patrol. I can tell you when I was on patrol, particularly just driving through a neighborhood, and we can black the car out, I can turn off the brake lights and whatnot, and I'm just moving slow, and then I see a dome light and a car on. That's odd. So I stop, I walk up there. Yeah, there's a kid in there, he's breaking the dash out, trying to take the stereo. That's what they do. They're trying to catch those people in the act, or looking for cars from talking to people in that neighborhood of, yeah, these are the people that's doing this. Well, when they see those people, well, it's okay. What are you doing now? And, making traffic contacts on the people they think are speeding or causing issues in a neighborhood more. Just making the contacts and being there. It's not necessarily just the visibility.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Chief.
I was going to ask, how much does a neighborhood watch informing those fit into the proactive enforcement efforts?
We have neighborhood watch. We just don't have the people in that unit. Jeff is the only one that's in there right now. So neighborhood watches work great if they meet regularly and their people actually take the advice that they're giving from their neighbors and things, and they're actually watching out for each other. I think that works very effectively.
I was going to say in the before times, because I know COVID changed the way we do things, but National Night Out would have a range of city services come and talk to residents. And I thought that was actually pretty helpful for getting people in First Courthouse to form a neighborhood watch or begin the process before COVID hit, obviously. But is there any plan to
I think we talk about that exact thing, exactly what you're getting at, is we have talked about, hey, we like our event because people that don't get out in their neighborhood or their neighborhood doesn't happen to have an event like you're talking about, they could come there and we can talk to them there and we have those people there. But we've had a lot of requests to, hey, I still like to have our neighborhood things on those various neighborhoods that we would have it, and have people stop by, and the council members would ride with us and they would hear the same problems that we would hear. So as we get our staffing numbers back up and officers back on, we could start picking that back up and make the list like we used to.
Well, and a lot of that advice was, I thought it was common sense, like make sure your gates are locked, your doors are locked, you have a
Right.
porch light,
Lock your cars, don't leave stuff in your car. Yeah, you're right.
But I mean, sometimes it takes having a meeting and hearing that and then having everybody commit to doing those actions to reduce the amount of car break-ins or other issues you're experiencing.
Yes,
So,
I agree, 100%.
Just, one year I remember, I forget what the event was specifically, but Norman PD did a sort of a town hall here at City Hall, and it was kind of about stuff like that. And then an officer came in and noted that he had looked through all the vehicles in the parking lot to see how many valuables were left. And said, I just want to let everybody know this is how many vehicles I saw with valuables in sight. Someone will break your window even if it's locked, so not leaving your stuff in there. So I thought that was really helpful. And I agree that I really did like the event last year at the mall, and having all the different stuff out where everybody could see it, and helicopters were there, and that was cool. But I did really like the traveling to the neighborhoods and riding with the police officer and getting to hear, us both being there, getting to hear from the neighbors about what's going on in their neighborhood, and the kids all seeing the fire truck pull up or the police car pull up. So that was kind of neat too.
Yeah.
So
I
would
agree.
like to see us
We
be
hear
able to
that from, which I imagine you all are hearing that too. We hear from the people too that, hey, we like doing this. So definitely something we would probably move back toward, but still have our event
I think that'd be great.
That'll be November,
October.
October.
Yeah, we did it in August
Used to be in
originally. Ugly hot in August, but October, yeah, much happier weather and
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, when in October was that gonna be?
I cannot remember. Do any of you guys remember National Night Out?
It's like the first,
October 2nd, is that the mall again this year, like you did like last year?
Is that a
This year's
Monday?
even Better, it's on Monday night.
Yeah.
This year's even better, it's kind of last year on steroids, in addition to the
Mm.
6,000 square foot bouncy house thing
Yeah.
and the place that we usually do.
Monday.
We're now in the front of the mall, out on Main Street.
Mhm.
Wow.
And they've added some
Yeah.
different community partners and different programs in there in addition to what we did last year. So
I just want to know if the helicopters are going to be there again.
That was cool.
Yes,
are
we still
awesome.
plan on having them.
That was
it
cool.
made Michael Robertson
Yeah,
want even more.
right?
A Norman police helicopter.
Yeah.
Actually,
Well, if you
what's a
guys
plane?
could
He has a plane.
share that
Yeah.
with us, so we could start putting that out there, because I know a lot of Ward 6 people are always go to that and are very interested, so.
save
But-
the date. We'll get a save the date prepared.
Right. I'm enthusiastic about that we're not a crime-ridden city. We don't need Batman just yet. So that's super helpful. Hopefully we can get the police department staffed and everything that you guys need to continue. I'm excited to see what the study has to say, but
We are too.
we're not as, pew 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 Wild West as some people might think. So thank you for the presentation and you all over there.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Also, thanks for presentation, and also because we had that Target bomb
Yes.
threat, and then also the swatting that happened at OU. I was a little curious if you could give us an update, like on, have we had an uptick in swatting? Like, is this like 3 now?
There seems to be a lot of those going around, and that has been going on. And they send them, like on this most recent one that you're talking about, that's sent to the media. It didn't come to us. And then we get in and respond. And we turn those over to the FBI. And they are investigating that. They are working both with, they'll work with Google and Target Corporate Security to
Is it
follow up on
also
this.
changing how you do things around these calls at all, or highlighting a need? I know we talked about needing to be all in the same communication system.
Yes, that is super important, particularly responding to any type of call that, you don't have people responding that isn't communicating with other people that are responding. But I think for a long time, we have known about swatting and we're very careful about that, so you don't call in about the mayor saying, oh my gosh, this is going on. He said he's going to kill his wife or whatever, and trying to get us to respond and kicking his door or whatever. We've got the right tactics and the right things in place, so hopefully we don't have a bad incident happen here like that. So.
Well, we haven't yet, so thanks.
Well, thank you, Chief, and gentlemen, very much appreciate it. Very informative.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Item number 2, discussion regarding an navigation easement at Westwood Park for the Max Westheimer Airport. I say navigation, but I can't say that. I practice.
This is where I go a little bit faster. Catherine, I think we have,
That's the map, right?
oh, yeah. So I didn't know if we had it up on the big screen, so
Bryce should have it.
you may or may not be able to make out what's going on the picture. Bryce will pull it up on the big screen. The long blue line from the bottom of the page to the top of the page on the right-hand side is Robinson. You'll see 24th Northwest on the bottom, the squiggly line, and you'll see Flood making the big arc from the upper right to the lower left side of the page. So Max Westheimer Airport in the middle, and you'll see the 2 yellow zones that look like they cross Robinson. What those are zones of concern from the FAA's perspective. Max Westheimer is in the process of being considered for federal funding to the tune of about $35 million in total. And that will include a new tower, runway improvements, runway extension, taxiway improvements, and opportunities for additional hangar space on Max Westheimer. And lots of opportunities to improve the viability of the airport here in Norman. And of course, it's the future home of the Oklahoma Aviation Academy. So not only has OU just recently bought a bunch of airplanes to add to their fleet, we're going to be training high school students so they'll know how to work on them and fly them and all those kind of wonderful things as they work their way into the field. In this particular instance, this conversation kind of came up as we were working our way through right-of-way acquisition on the Jenkins widening project through OU's campus. And we needed a considerable amount of right-of-way from OU to make the S curve between Imhoff and Constitution, with the big roundabout in the middle. You approved the agreement with OG&E to underground. It's going to be the newest sexy entrance into the University of Oklahoma off of Highway 9. In this particular instance, the right-of-way necessary for the roundabout was about $3.2 million, which we didn't have in the project. So we said, okay, OU, we really need you to tee up that right-of-way for us so we can make Jenkins what we all want Jenkins to look like. And they said, well, we kind of have the same request, because in order for us to do the runway extension, that protection zone crosses Robinson, which is fine, and it goes into the Westwood Golf Course. Now, we didn't have any plans to build houses there, so we thought, well, that's great, as long as everybody's playing golf. The Federal Aviation Administration is warm and fuzzy with the runway extension and that protection zone. It's basically designed to say, nobody's ever gonna build vertical construction in this yellow spot on the map. We wanted to bring it to council's attention, because there's a couple of different possibilities of what we need to do to protect that piece of the map going forward. Obviously, a runway extension, we can bring in larger aircraft, which we think is probably going to look like a necessity in the Southeastern Conference. What we're told is, when A&M shows up, they all fly. So we will see, and this is 10 years in the making. It's not a speedy thing to do those kinds of airport improvements, but wanted to put this in front of you, and as we got right away from OU, that they'll be talking to us about right of way under, we don't know the final form. Catherine's put her fingers on some FAA guidance that talk about navigation easements that can be recorded to ensure that nothing ever gets built vertically there that would have a negative impact on the length of the runway and change what Max Westheimer would have to do after they've spent.
But the
loads of
highest
federal
thing at
dollars.
that point is a club in the back of somebody's hand.
Exactly.
There's nothing there.
And I think and there are lots of airports with golf courses nearby, but it is wide open, and I guess if you're playing golf and you hear a loud noise coming your way, they're warm and fuzzy with you taking off running, as long as you're not in the house and have to, get out of the house before a plane may make a rough landing. But Catherine, your thoughts on the nature of what that protection may need to look like in terms of something recorded on a deed?
Yeah, so what OU's asking for is a deed of the property and a lease back of that golf course property to the city for 50 years, for $1 a year. I think this is still under negotiation, obviously, but one of the things they say is the lease lasts 50 years for so long as the property does not interfere with the operation or development of the airport in the university's discretion, so that's obviously something we want more discussion on. And looking at navigation easements, they can qualify under the FAA guidelines, but you have to be really careful to make sure that interest is protected by the language of the easement, so we want to be really careful for the airport purposes that they're covered sufficiently so that they are still able to access these funds and have the right rights to the property. It may also include some zoning to the property. I don't know that it's currently zoned. I know it's on the land use plan as parkland, but we may want to zone it as parkland to help further ensure that it remains recreational only, not be subject to development.
The little bit or the whole?
I would say do the whole golf course. We've been
Oh.
wanting to kind of go through and rezone our parks anyway, so that would be.
Helps you with your rules
It'd be a
of
good effort.
operation for all your parks.
Councilmember Peacock.
City Manager, I think you actually answered the first question. This is being done in anticipation for larger aircraft, is that right? Okay.
Correct.
And then I see there's also two other areas, one on the northeast and the one on the far north that look like property acquisition zones. Will the university be coming back for two other discussions on this, or is it the goal to wrap all this up into one package?
Yeah, I don't know if the city has any ownership interest in those other areas.
The one that really strikes me is the one that crosses the railroads,
Yeah.
Yes.
which,
And in that
VA.
particular instance, over the tracks, being railroad property may not be a bad thing because I think they anticipate those staying in that condition forever.
right.
Has been the case. And we worked with the university, their preference would have been On-Q didn't get built where On-Q got built up on Flood and Tecumseh. If you have a rough takeoff or a rough landing, that they would prefer that to be a nice grassy, soft field. But there wasn't any vehicle prior to record those requests on the real property. So real property changes hands and people buy real estate. Is it platted? Is it zoned? Is it entitled for me to do what I want to do? And it was kind of ambiguous of any needs or requirements that the FAA had for the airport. So we're in much greater communication with the airport operators when a development proposal comes up that's anywhere near Max Westheimer. It's just a new level of attention we put eyes on.
I appreciate that. And so you anticipate that this is the southern piece is the only piece we'll be talking about?
That'll be the city of Norman's conversation.
Appreciate that.
That's what I'm sure.
Catherine, can you restate what they're asking for right now, the terms of lease, 50-year, and then something about $1 per?
They would acquire the property, not purchase it, and lease it back to the city for $1 per year for 50 years, for so long as the property is used as a golf course and does not interfere with the operation or development of the university's airport in the university's discretion.
Okay, so they're just buying that small section?
And it would be
Hatched area.
it'd be
Yeah.
a legal description, since it's all one big giant thing, we'd have to go out there and define it with a survey.
So they're not expecting us to change our golf course, cause they're right there,
Yeah, there's a tee box and a
Can I think of
fairway
the-
right up along the
Yes.
fence, so.
At
Yeah.
this point, I mean,
Like,
if
I
at
can't
some
think
point
of
they
the name.
determined it interfered with the operation or development of the airport, then it may become an issue. And so I stepped up a little while ago and talked to OU's general counsel and said that's probably something we would need to tweak.
yeah.
But we can continue to work through that if that's the direction council wants to go.
Yeah,
This opportunity presented itself like Friday, so we scrambled and said, we do have an opportunity to talk to council early next week.
Yeah, I'm not, in favor of holding up $35 million of improvements to our airport, but we do know that, we're having some heartburn and challenges around other areas that we have put money into and developed that we are currently leasing. And so, I understand that this is a much smaller section and maybe Jason can talk about, are there ways that we could, change the couple of holes that are in that area if it were to become an issue, and what would the cost to the city be to, reroute the golf course around?
I think that's right around the 10th and 11th holes.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit into the 12th. To reroute our golf course around that whole section would probably be millions of dollars. So it'd be a lot. It's a lot of heartburn I'll be honest, from my side that it's a little bit worried about leaving a control of one of your only municipal golf course in the hands of someone else or a couple holes. Just want us to be careful as we
Yeah, our preference is the
progress on this.
abrogation easement that's a recorded document, that it's
Yeah,
our ownership fee title.
I don't feel great about selling, them actually acquiring that property. I'm definitely leaning towards an easement with language and things like that. So just based on the things that we're having to deal with Sutton and, the soccer fields at Griffin and all of that, that just gives me a lot of heartburn for selling land.
Councilmember Holman?
Yeah, I have a similar feeling about that. I'd be more than willing to put any agreement that we'll never build on it or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if it wasn't a golf course anymore,
It's
it would
almost
seem like it
tennis,
being
yeah.
a preserved open area or grass, green space, a park would be a good use of it. But yeah, I would have the same kind of apprehension about turning it completely over, and especially if there was a provision about if it interferes, because yeah, what does that mean? And and I would wonder, okay, so like the widening of Jenkins, the improvements to Jenkins, it will look a lot nicer, traffic will flow better, it'll have multimodal paths. So there's a real tangible benefit to the university of us doing this. And even though I'm a very big supporter of the roundabout, I think it was their idea. So I'm for doing it. I want to do it. I'm glad they're supportive of doing it. But like they're getting something out of that project. What does the city of Norman get by giving this up? Because like football fans from the SEC are coming to Norman whether they fly or drive, right? So what do we benefit by giving that up? Is what I would, from a public interest, what is the public of Norman benefit from bigger planes being able to land here? I guess.
I think the long-term viability of a west side fixed-based operator that would provide you access through University North Park, basically Rock Creek, as a place to drive right into the airport, could be a huge economic generator for the entire city. It probably adds value to the Oklahoma Aviation Academy, and I think provides the additional programming opportunities for the OU Aviation School, which has been growing by leaps and bounds. And it not that you're going to land a 747 there, but the types of citation jets and that type of product, bigger and bigger, 12 passenger and 15 passenger. And in those conversations with the operators of Max Westheimer, and it's interesting how it works. They are allowed to occasionally land a bigger plane, but the limitations are how much wear and tear does a bigger plane put on the thickness of your runway. In order to account for that long term, it needs to be longer and it needs to be thicker, which is why it's so incredibly expensive to go in there and manipulate a golf course. It's definitely cheaper to try to make it a little bit longer to accommodate those bigger planes than it is to go start from scratch somewhere else. The ability for them to land and do business here in Norman as opposed to the name of the other airport where it's close by.
Wiley Post.
Wiley Post. I just read an article about who Wiley Post was. It was fascinating. Oh my gosh.
Both the big metro airports are named after the
Yeah,
people that died.
but a lot of people go to Wiley Post just because they can't get that thing landed here in Park. So yeah, fuel sales will go up. That fixed-based operator doing maintenance and charter services out of Max Westheimer, we do see it as an attraction, and of course the ability to get more people in and out of the university as efficiently as possible. And this is just one more component of moving people in and out.
Well, like I said, I would fully support an agreement that we would never build anything on the golf course or do anything different than what's there right now.
That would be our push.
Thanks.
Councilmember Graham.
Also feel similarly, but also curious, so have they acquired the other pieces of property they need for this? Like, I'm kind of curious.
I don't know. I know they've been working mightily in their preparation for the request for federal funding. They've had, Congressman Cole in his current role on committees, his staff has been very heavily invested in transportation, including Amtrak, rail improvements as well as airport improvements. And they had to be pretty far down the road in their ability to compete for those federal dollars. So I don't know if everything is complete.
But we won't be the ones holding them up while we work it out.
Correct.
That's what I'm getting at.
And it is interesting, there are lots of cities across the country where the city owns the airport, and I'm really happy the university owns it. It's a lot of work. They're not gold mines by any stretch of the imagination, and they can come with liability. I think this just happens to be a great fit since the university has so much programming involved on the campus. And to see it modernized with a new tower and, all new avionic equipment, it'll just pull Norman and Max Westheimer into the 21st century.
I would say to maybe the benefit for public interest would be quality of jobs.
No doubt about it. The West Side fixed-based operator, it would be quality jobs and people flying charter and those types of planes. That's an expensive hobby. And if that means they're spending more money in Norman, how do you get them from the airport to OU? Uber drivers, I have a feeling, Paul, and so it would, be a job stimulator for existing Norman residents too.
But we don't get any sales tax off of this.
I don't know, Anthony, do we get sales tax off of fuel sales? No. Okay, yeah, that would be, now if they're doing mechanic work at the fixed-based operator, there'd be parts just like it was one of the auto dealerships, it'd be similar to that.
We get a share of the motor fuel excise tax that the state gets, but it's only for street maintenance.
And they don't have a restaurant on there yet? Is that
Not
part
yet.
of it? Not anymore.
I have a feeling, and they've talked about the opportunity for that restaurant, and I think you add 40 big hangars and the fixed-based operator, and all of a sudden there's enough synergy and daily activity to support that restaurant coming back.
I will give them the whole golf course if they bring back Aussies and put in a tunnel that connects Rock Creek.
They build Rock
I'll give
Creek
them the
under
whole
the
golf
airport.
course. Tunnel.
The Foreman
Connect
Memorial
us.
Tunnel. Maybe not
Yes.
Memorial, not Memorial.
So you get on
Just
the
the
bus at the
Foreman
Stephen
Tunnel.
Tyler Holman
Yeah.
Transit Center.
Foreman Underground Tunnel. Bring back Aussies.
You're getting a sidewalk.
I'm so happy I got to eat at Ozzy's before it closed. Oh,
Oh,
It was a Norman institution.
Yeah.
so good.
Well, we will continue those conversations.
They're
The
forever
university
without
will
any
keep you
improvements to the
up to
airport.
speed as those conversations materialize. And when it comes to document time, you'll see it in the study session before you see it on an agenda.
Appreciate that. Is there any other comment from council? If not, this meeting is adjourned.